Hey, this is Rory from PepTok, and I am here with Peter Magic from Janoshik, the gold standard of testing in the peptide industry. Anyway, Peter, hey, thank you for meeting me this morning. How are you doing today?
Wow, thank you for having me. All's good. How about you? How's your day?
Uh, it's 6 a.m. here, so it's like an early start. But hey, let me get right into it. So first of all, Peter Magic, interesting name. So that's your real name then?
It is. It's in all the paperwork, and it's the name I was born with.
So
It's not like it's pretty uncommon, but it means absolutely nothing in my language.
and so how did you get the name Janoshik? Where does the name Janoshik come from?
Well, originally I'm from Slovakia, and Janoshik, he's a national folk hero for Slovakia and a little bit in Poland too. And a very, very, very long time ago, more than a decade and a half, I was participating in anonymous forums a lot, and I wanted something to distinguish so where I'm from. And given I started the business by accident, the name sort of stuck with me all the time.
Well, that's actually interesting because I am like doing this by accident. So let first question then, how did you accidentally start like the most famous testing company in the peptide industry? How does that come about?
Wow, I was like really, really, really scrawny kid. I had trouble with my back, trouble with my knees. I was like paper thin. So I got into weightlifting,
Yeah.
and in the weightlifting, a lot of people use performance enhancing drugs, and they were like, "Oh, I so wish I could figure out what I'm buying," and like, okay, so why don't you try? Why nobody ever tries? It cannot be that difficult, right?
Yeah.
So I started getting into it for my friends and the people I knew, like for beer money, and the people were amazed with the fact they can actually get it tested. They don't have to believe the people what they're getting. They don't have to trust nobody. And so my friends they recommended me further and further and further, and I was like, okay, but there's no way I'm doing this for the beer money anymore. Like it was not a profit venture
Yeah.
for the first year or two. So I'm like, okay, I need to bump prices a little bit, and I just sort of did it on the side. I was still studying. I was doing other stuff like programming, writing, articles, stocking shelves too. In the back then, I did that as
Yeah.
well. But there was a lot of very amazing and pretty girls around, so I like the job a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, s-
And
Go
yeah,
on.
and after a couple of years, I did a lot of stuff like organizing congress. I helped to do some medical stuff, medical dictionaries. But I always was doing this on the side. And at some point, this grew so much. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing medicine anymore. I'm not doing programming anymore. I'm going to focus on this.
So was your background in what were you studying? Was your background in medical or chemistry or completely unrelated? You taught yourself.
Uh, I studied med school, but the chemical analysis I taught myself in its entirety.
Okay. So peptides. When when did you start getting into peptides? How long ago did you start getting into peptides testing?
Well, we always did some sort of peptide testing. The most popular peptide is human growth hormone,
Yeah.
which had always been sort of used in the performance
Correct.
enhancing
Yeah.
drugs industry. So that's the one we've been seeing since the start. And here and there, we start seeing like melanotan here, then we're seeing something else. So it's been from the start, but it's been the minority of the samples. Then, for example, we seen the first GLP-1 peptide sometime in 2015, 2016, but it wasn't GLP-1 such as semaglutide or tirzepatide. It was just the original human GLP-1 peptide. I looked it up a while ago, but it's been like 2015, 16. But then in 2023, we started like, okay, can you test this semaglutide and tirzepatide? Okay, there was one sample 1 month, then 2 samples next month, and then it exploded over 2023 and 24. So the demand for the GLP-1s exploded overnight.
So
to say.
What percentage of your business now is in peptides, and what percentage is in the performance-enhancing drugs?
It's, I would say, off the top of my head, at 70 to 80% of my business is peptides now.
Wow. And that's only in the last 2 years, and it took over everything then, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. But we were well prepared for that. Given we already tested peptides here and there, we had the database, we had the experience to start with, so it was just a matter of scaling. We had less work to do than the other labs. And it certainly does help that most of the peptides, a lot of them, they're scheduled in many countries around the world. They're extremely highly regulated, for example, here in Czechia.
Yeah.
But we have all the paperwork ready because we were doing them from early on. So we have all the paperwork, we have all the bureaucracy, we have the experience with importing them from all over the world, which, for example, is pretty difficult to do legally in other countries. So in most of the countries in Europe, it's not possible at all, actually.
So how many vials are you doing a day or a month, or like? Just peptides. Let's talk just peptides, not the other stuff.
I actually had opened the database because I'm losing track of it all. It changes so fast, and we're doing 100 peptide tests a day.
So
every single day, weekends included.
So you guys are around the clock, working every day.
Yeah.
Oh my God! So 100 vials a day. Probably multiple vials so maybe 50 customers a day.
It's possible, and in this, the multi-vial tests are not counted. For example, we have one test, but there are 4 vials tested for the one test, so that's not counted into the number. But yeah, we are working. We actually have multiple people working on the peptides alone, so. You don't know who you are getting the results from. It might be me, it might be Eliška, it might be Teresa.
Yeah.
There are multiple people working in parallel, so we can process it all.
Okay. So how many different tests do you offer for peptides? Obviously, mass purity is, the number one. That's the one that every vendor uses. But what other tests are you performing on peptides?
Well, the most popular tests are MS screening. So we just put mass spectrometry.
Oh, okay,
screening.
Mass, yeah.
So we put it into the LCMS and check whether there's something expected, unexpected, or some impurities, especially in the large peptides that are difficult to resolve with anything other than mass spectrometry.
So LCMS is for... So that's different than the mass spectrometry, right?
No. LCMS just means liquid chromatography, mass spectrometry.
Okay, so that's it's all the same. Okay, got you.
Yeah. And that's pretty popular. Then we do endotoxin testing. We're doing some right now.
Yeah.
Dorotka, she's actually our youngest employee. Dorothy in English.
Yeah.
She turned 20 just a couple of weeks ago, but she has the background in nursery school, so she's used to sterile work.
Okay.
So she's doing endotoxin. We have the laminar flow box. She doesn't let anyone from the company near her when she's working.
Yeah.
So she's doing endotoxin tests.
Yeah.
It's a lot of transferring liquids with pipette from one field to other, and you just have to be extremely clean, because if you contaminate it just slightly, your results are off the hook.
Yeah.
And she's also doing the sterility tests, which are pretty popular with the peptides, because it's also done in the laminar flow hood. So because she needs the sterile working space, so she's doing those.
How long does it take to do the endotoxin test? How long does it take to do each of these tests?
Well, it's pretty difficult for me to tell, actually. You do these tests, the endotoxin tests, you do them in a batch. You need to create a calibration curve, like you have a sample of known concentration of endotoxin. You get several concentrations, you prepare that you get, I really hope they took some specimen. You get a micro titration plate.
Yeah.
And you just do 20 or 50 samples. I'm not entirely sure right now. I think the titration plate, it has 52 spaces, and we do the samples duplicates to ensure there's no mistake happening. And you just do the samples in a batch. So if you test like one sample, it's just slightly less work than testing 20 samples. As long as you stay on the single plate, on the one plate of testing. So I would say it's roughly 5 to 10 minutes per sample of work.
Yeah.
And roughly $60 in the spent consumables.
Okay. So we got the mass spectrometry, endotoxin, sterility. Any other tests that you're doing?
Well, we do have CHNS machine. That's just basically burning machine. When you're dealing with a new peptide, for example, a peptide we've never tested before, we can check it whether it's pure, and we can burn it to determine how much exactly there is of it. Because when you burn organic stuff, it releases gases, and if it contains, for example, hydrogen, a very well burned hydrogen turns into water.
Yeah.
If it contains carbon, which it always does, it turns into CO2. If it contains nitrogen, it gets turned into NO2. And you can measure the gases, and then through a bunch of calculations, you can calculate how much of the peptide there is, even if you've never ever tested it before.
Huh. How about like heavy metals? I hear people talk about testing the peptides for heavy metals, or like people have like said, oh, I'm worried about fentanyl in the vial. Are those tests that can be done or picked on peptides?
Yeah, we do have a metal test on the regular. People are worried. We mostly advise against it because there's not really been a case of peptides contaminated by heavy metals. So in my opinion, the test is not necessary. So, but if people want it for the peace of their mind, we let them have it tested.
It's funny you say that. That was going to be my next question is which test is the most overrated test? And I don't know if you know, I think it's Josh from Trust Point.
Yeah, I do know him.
Yeah. He says hi. I was talking to him the other day. He said you were a great guy. He said had good things to and I had a conversation with him, and I was like, what do you think? What is the test that he's like, what tests should people be getting and which tests should they not be getting? And he actually said endotoxins. He goes, I can't remember anything ever failing endotoxin, but he said sterility. He goes that it fails. I think he said that sterility actually fails quite often. I think he might have said 10%, but that's just from my memory. But I was going to ask the same question to you. would you say is not worth it? Which test do you say that people should do more? And where's your highest failure rates?
Well, in my opinion, the heavy metals, they're straight out useless. We tell that to people. I've never made a secret out of it, but people just like heavy tested for the peace of their mind. But it's not like it would go against my values to push it on the people. It costs us nothing because we have a machine that can test heavy metals.
Yeah.
And after the initial $200,000 it cost, the machine cost, we have no additional costs with testing the samples.
Yeah.
That's what's great about the machine. But we're doing the test at $60 to $120 per sample. So we try to keep the costs low, but we would love to pay off the machine at some point. But I wouldn't like to push the test on stuff I don't feel it's necessary for. But for sterility, I would say we have roughly 3 to 5% failure rate.
So, wow. 3 to 5%. And then how about endotoxins? How often do they fail?
Well, for the endotoxin, you have a pretty high permissible levels. Basically, the levels in the vial is the amount you can get per single injection, or the entire content of the vial. And we don't really look into it too much, if we would have to calculate what is the usual dose, etc. But we're not seeing failures a lot. But if we are seeing a failure, it's always something that would fail sterility as well. So if the product is liquid, we've seen endotoxin, we've seen terrible endotoxin failures in liquid products because there obviously was something growing in them. And if it grows endotoxin.
So do you mean, you talk about like a reconstituted peptide?
Yeah. I can remember 2 failures of the endotoxin, like they were off the chart. And it was the samples that were tested for sterility as well.
Yeah.
And they failed immediately, it was really bad. Those are off the top of my head. It's possible we've had some high results from endotoxin, but frankly, nothing so terrible that my girls would call me and, hey, come take a look at this. This can't be right. And it only happened twice so far.
Okay, so here's the stuff that I want to know, because I get into arguments with people all the time. You have a YouTube video showing you shaking some tirzepatide, and I'm basically of the opinion, I'm telling people, people say, do not inject the bacteriostatic water in there. And I'm thinking, there's millions of people on peptides, and people are not that careful, but they're still working. So I think it's bullshit. But you tell me, can I shake my peptides, my retatrutide, and can I inject that water directly onto the powder? What is the answer?
Yeah, go wild with it.
God, that's my motto. So there's and any of the peptides, we shouldn't be paranoid about that. Or is there any peptides that you should be careful with?
I'm not aware of any peptide in our field of work that would be sensitive. There are peptides that are sensitive, but none of them is in this field of business.
So this is going to be wild when I post this on TikTok, because there's people that swear that you shouldn't inject the bacteriostatic water. Okay, shelf life.
May I?
What?
This is actually, I given in this business for a decade and a half, the myth of the peptides and the hormone being extremely sensitive to shaking or too fast injection of water. It's a myth that's been perpetuated by the people who've been selling low quality or no content growth hormone. It's been so for the longest time.
Really?
Yeah, so this myth has been around for a long time, and it's been intentionally pushed by the people who've been trying to justify the fact that the stuff they've been selling, it doesn't test well, it doesn't work for the people, etc., etc. I've heard it. I've heard it all. I've heard it all the justifications for why something ain't working, and then the sample actually arrived to the lab, and there was nothing in there, just the filler.
Okay, let's talk. Here's the other two questions I have. Shelf life of peptides. I heard a rumor that the you had found some peptides in your garage. I don't know. This is internet stuff, but you found some peptides in your garage. You tested them. They were years old and they were still good. So I don't know if that's a story, but what can you tell me about storage of peptides, shelf life? How long will they last? You got any information on that?
It's actually it's a true story. You know, when I started the business in 2012 or 2013, I don't remember anymore. And we started in Slovakia, and I kept the samples. Like, for example, you got peptides, and instead of one vial, you got the entire kit of 10.
Yeah.
So I just put them in the bag, like, in case we need to reference for the sample later on. And then I forgot about them for a decade. So I tested them again. It's been mostly human growth hormone.
Yeah.
There's been multiple manufacturing plants.
Yeah.
Over the years that sent all their batches to me.
Yeah.
So I had this insanely huge bag full of growth hormone in my garage, left over from the early days. And then we moved the company to Czech.
Just hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of HGH just laying in your garage.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been a difficult thing to explain to authorities.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure they would believe in my justification. It's leftover samples.
Yeah.
But thankfully, it's all gone now. Thankfully. But yeah, it did degrade, but not in a manner that would affect much. Like, you could tell it was being slightly degraded, but it would still work. It's still like it. A person won't know if they're getting 11 international units or 10 and a half. You just don't feel that.
It's the difference between that on a syringe, I'm assuming.
Yeah. So it might be lower purity. It might have a slightly more local effects or side effects, but it's still gonna work. And it's been in a room temperature for a decade.
So do you feel safe saying that, like, GLP-1s are pretty much the same, or have you done any tests with those?
We've done a lot of degradation tests with those. They're really stable, but there's stuff that you need to take into account. A properly made, undissolved lyophilized vial is gonna be extremely stable even at room temperature. In fridge, it's gonna last you years. In freezer, I don't know, maybe decades. But, for example, there's been issues. A particular manufacturing plant had issues. So something that shouldn't have gotten into the vials, it got into the vials, which meant that the first 3 or 4%, it degraded really fast. And then it slowed down to the usual rate. So, for example, if you tested the vial 3 days from manufacturer, we have pretty much direct line between China and our lab.
Yeah, that was going to be a question for the future, but yeah.
Yeah, so we can get samples from China really, really, really fast in the lab. And apologize, I need to put my phone quiet.
Oh yeah,
I have a frog sound made. So, and then we see the same sample in a month, even if it's been stored properly, and it was 96% because 4% it degraded really fast. And then we saw it again in 6 or 12 months, and not much else happened with the sample. So there's a lot of scenarios that are non-standard that we're seeing.
But for the most part, so assuming that you get your sample, you get it from China, it takes maybe a month before the customer gets it. They send it off to a testing agency. If it's testing at 99% at that point, then you can pretty much assume that it should be good for years in the refrigerator, decades in the freezer.
Yeah, yeah. You can be. It's as a rule of thumb. That's what I would say with a piece of my heart.
Well, this is good because I have 5,000 milligrams of retatrutide in a negative 40 deep freezer just in case. Well, just in case the guys with the guns come after it or whatever in the future. I stocked
Yeah,
up.
yeah. It's the -40 freezer. It's pretty overkill, but
Is
it's
it?
gonna last you
Oh,
a while.
I sell those on my Amazon link, so now no one's going to buy them anymore. So just a normal freezer would work.
Yeah, I actually think the fridge would be plenty enough for most people, but I don't think your business is in danger. A lot of people, they like that extra peace of mind.
Yeah, yeah. So now I have it for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah, yeah, I would say, yeah. We've seen. I work with a peptide research institute here. Not much anymore, but in the start we used to cooperate with them a lot, and they keep peptides and stuff like that frozen for decades without any issues.
Oh, wow. Man, this is gold. Okay. What peptide you test more than any other peptide? What's the biggest one? My guess is going to be retatrutide now, then tirzepatide, and then I don't know what would be third, but you tell me.
I would have to look into my database, but off the top of my head, I would say there's a peptide.
Really? And your customer, as you alluded to earlier, you have everyone knows that if you're buying, because I go on the dark gray. So I invented the term dark gray because that's like you get it from overseas, and then in the U.S. you have the research peptides. I call that light gray. But so I go over to China, and obviously they have to have a Janoshik COA. So what percentage of your business is from China? Where's your business coming from around the world?
Well, we actually make presentations for universities or peptide researchers, like real peptide researchers.
Yeah.
I mean the PhD sort of stuff, and I will try. We actually made a nice presentation for them. It's been pretty funny when I was having a presentation at a university, and the guys from the customs, they came, they sit in the front row, and everything I said they took notes of.
So you're the guy testing for the black market, and they're like just learning from you.
Yeah, they actually are. And we also do stuff that's not peptides, that's anabolic steroids,
Yeah.
which we have paperwork for and everything. So they really, really, really wanted to know what we're talking about. I'll try to get the camera.
Okay.
I made a nice, sweet map like this.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah, and it just says that slightly over half of the revenue we're getting from the US.
Okay.
As the US is, well, it's the biggest customer market, customer base on the world. Mostly private people and the research companies. Now it's the research companies.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And the second biggest country is the China.
Oh,
that's where the manufacturing base is. And as the people require the tests directly from them, their clients, whether it's a private person or a company, they want the Chinese manufacturer to show them a piece of paper that's stamped by us.
I know that. Okay, well let's get into COAs and buying peptides. So, and we talked about this earlier. We were messaging this. So this is a hard question. The one thing that I see people ask about is U.S. vendors will get, or I'm sure this happens to multiple countries, but U.S. vendors, the wholesaler, manufacturer, whatever, from China will let the vendor, the person selling at retail, use their COA by having their name changed. And I've seen a lot of people say, they're unhappy that is a thing. But can you tell me, under what conditions can a vendor get a COA from a manufacturer and have their name put on it?
Well, we do have some pretty strict rules about this. When some vendor, manufacturer, wholesaler, when they want an extra report, we require it to be ordered beforehand, and only the actual person who has the test conducted, only they can do it. It's not like anyone can come afterwards and get an additional report made. We do this because oftentimes there's, for example, in the US especially, there's a couple of companies sharing the same stock.
I am well aware. I am well aware of who you're talking about.
Yeah. There's a lot of them actually.
Yeah.
Like that. So we let them use the same report. It's from the same vial and everything, and frankly, I don't see no issue with it, because if someone wanted to send a fake sample for that, they could just do that. We have no way to verify the origin of the sample. That's why the community testing is so important. That's why the group testing, blind test, just send a sample to the lab. Don't let them know who is it from. Let them know the dosage. And that's what's actually keeping everyone in check, including us.
So, it is funny you say that, because that's actually my whole TikTok thing is about talking about how group testing is actually the what do I call it, the superpower of the whole peptide community, because that's the better than anything else. It's when you have the customers send in random samples that's going to be the best judge of whether a company is providing quality peptides.
Yeah, I mean, you get a blind testing, and there's not much better than that. You're sending the samples blind, and you're getting unbiased results. There's also multiple labs that are testing the stuff, so people can figure out which labs are consistent, etc. For example, yeah.
So it's funny you should say that. So let's talk real quick about Finric, and I'm going to talk about Kraus Labs. So I have a vendor that has been tested by you multiple times, and there was a batch that had been tested 9 different vials. So and you'll know who it is if I just tell you this. 3 vials of the batch were sent in by the vendor. Then the vendor paid for group testing. 3 more vials of this batch were sent in. Then the customers paid for testing, and it was all retatrutide. 3 more vials were sent in. So there was 9 vials all tested exactly the same. But I had seen Finric had sent a sample to another laboratory, Kraus Labs, for another sample, and its mass did not match. The mass impurity did not match, and I was suspicious. So I took, of my own personal stock, I sent in 4 vials of this batch that you had tested 9 times. I sent it into Finric, and I said, I need this to go to 4 different places. They sent 1 to you guys. You tested it exactly the same as the original 9. They sent 1 to Chromate. Chromate tested exactly the same as you did. And then they sent 2 to Kraus Labs. And these 2 were, I think, several milligrams of mass off from you guys. So I guess my question is, why is there such divergence in testing between different testing agencies?
Well, for starters, you're always going to get some little variance between the samples. Yeah. But if you have a stock of 15 of them, and 15 of them tested the same, it would be pretty weird for some of them it
For
tested at particular lab to
yeah,
be off. That would be a pretty weird coincidence. Then of course it depends on how your lab is set up. For example, it's pretty difficult to keep the testing lab running properly,
yeah,
and there's an awful lot of things that can go wrong. Like there's so many steps in the testing process, and any one of them might go wrong, and it might cause an off result. You might have a wrong standard. You might dissolve it in a wrong amount of liquid. Your liquid dispenser might be improperly calibrated. There might be a bubble. It might not dissolve properly if it's not checked. Your machine might be your HPLC testing pump. It might be slightly off. There might be a bubble there, and you have hundreds and hundreds of things like this, which can go wrong. So if a lab is not getting the correct results, it might be just a case of something somewhere going
calibration.
wrong.
Okay, so is it more likely for a peptide to be bad or for something to go wrong with the test? So if you get, so if you send a sample in and it comes out, you send in like retatrutide, and retatrutide is what I know that I use that as a
Yeah.
standard because it's most popular. But you send in, you got some R12, you send it in, and it tests 97%, and it tests at it tests at 97% purity. Is it more likely that the test was wrong, or is it more likely that it really was 97%?
Wow, that's a difficult question,
I
really.
yeah, I know it's, but I'm seeing, I'm looking on Finric and I'm seeing a lot of these 97%, but
Well, it depends on your methodology. Of course, when we're seeing some low result, we have the actual benefit of having an LCM as at hand. So if we're seeing an impurity, something is 97% or 95, we just put it into the LCMS and take a look. Did something go wrong with the test? Do we just retest it again? Or can we actually check the MS, the LCMS,
yeah.
and see there's actually some degradation there? And if we see it, then we're like, okay, approving the result, and there we go.
Good. Nice. Okay, reconstituted peptides. Have you done any studies, any experiments with reconstituted? How long should people be keeping their reconstituted peptides? That's another question that I see a lot of people asking.
Well, we've had the testing groups order a whole lot of degradations like that, and generally they last you longer than you ought to keep them. At some point, after a particular amount of days or weeks, you are higher in a higher risk of there's something growing in
Yeah.
your vial, like it getting contaminated with microbes, then it actually degrading. Well, or it degrades when there's something living in there,
Yeah.
of course, but you're still most likely still getting a whole lot of the active compound in you, but it's not worth to keep peptides over 2 to 4 weeks, I would say.
So
For because then you start to get something growing in it, and it can cause local reactions. But the peptide itself, it's most likely still going to be okay after a month.
I think what I see mostly is common is it's 28 days after, after you. I mean, because people reconstitute retatrutide and they're using it for 4 weeks. Is using it for
Yeah.
4 weeks good? 6 weeks, 8 weeks dangerous? Where would you feel comfortable saying that it would be good to? How long could you use a
Well,
reconstituted peptide? Using good
I would be
practices.
pretty comfortable. I would be pretty comfortable after a month, because if it's stored in a fridge, you're using aseptic techniques, especially if it was sterile to begin with. Then after a month, you have absolutely nothing to worry. Then, of course, I'm paranoid. It's always better to be paranoid.
You do tests.
Yeah,
So you probably
and
should
I
be
studied
paranoid.
med school.
Yeah.
So the rule of thumb is if you're not sure about something, throw it out.
Yeah.
In the entire medical field. So generally, the generally advised is the 4 weeks. I wouldn't worry about the amount of the active substance after a lot longer, 6 or 8 weeks. But I cannot advise anyone to do that.
Gotcha.
Not only for liability purposes,
Yeah.
but because you're risking local reactions and stuff, and I think it's best avoided. I think everybody should just get vial size that fits their
1 month.
fits their purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's also good for the people, because if you have, we've seen stuff like 150 milligram vial of terzepatide,
Yeah.
and insanities like that, and it's not a good way to go about this, because you generally, if you keep your peptide vials 4 times your weekly dose, in case something goes really, really wrong, the worst case, you're getting overdose 3 times, which with peptides can be pretty annoying and can make you rather constipated and nauseous.
Yeah.
But it most likely won't cause you any long-term harm. But if you're doing, for example, 10 milligrams of terzepatide and your vial is 150 milligrams, and you accidentally do that, and people do that, you're in a world of pain and constipation. So I think using the smallest possible vials is actually doing something for safety of the people too.
So my one of the things that I've noticed, which I tell my followers about, is to only ever use Hospira, a bacteriostatic water from the U.S. I'm not sure what they have in Europe, but in the U.S. it's Hospira.
We don't have that.
Yeah, it's Eli Lilly, because I have seen quite a lot of people getting, I'm just going to call it the Chinese BAC water that they sell, come back with zero alcohol in it. And it kind of got me thinking that people keep testing they're testing their peptides, but it's the bacteriostatic water that makes up most of the, when you reconstitute it. So should I,
Yeah.
am I right to be more parent or to be more worried about the bacteriostatic water, especially these generic name brand ones? I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we're testing a lot of those recently. People are actually concerned with it more and more. It is a pretty good point. And we've seen everything. We've seen a lot of zero benzyl alcohol in them. Water. We've seen unsterile. We've seen concerning endotoxin results, like not concerning as in possible to do any harm. But it's really, really nice if you have 5,000 of endotoxin unit in a vial of peptide, but then your bacteriostatic water has 10 units per milliliter. It doesn't really matter how much your peptide was, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But in Europe, we don't use bacteriostatic water at all. We just use either saline for injection or sterile water for injection, which is just pure water.
Really?
And yeah, and it doesn't really matter much, in my opinion. The benzyl alcohol, it's not used over here, I believe, because the likelihood of it helping is roughly the same as the likelihood of it causing a local issue. The benzyl alcohol itself, it can cause some irritation and stuff.
This is going to be controversial. I love this.
Well, I've been telling this for years, but usually if we're dissolving peptides in ultra pure water, which the sterile water is the most similar to.
So you could, according to Peter from Janoshik, you can reconstitute your peptides with sterile water and keep those for 28 days in the refrigerator, no problem?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
There's very little difference from using bacteriostatic water from what I can tell.
But we should still be careful about these no name brand
Yeah,
BAC waters?
what I would do, but that's just a personal opinion of mine. I would get brand name like pharmacy sterile water or uh, saline for injection. Check if it works. For example, some peptides they might not really like saline.
Yeah.
Uh, I know we just use the ultra pure water, so I'd most likely use just that. I'll check which works with the peptide I'm using. It dissolves clearly, nicely, and then generally, if the saline works, then the saline is the best
Man.
because
Yeah.
that the saline has the least risk of it causing some sort of local reaction.
Wow. Okay. And I'm going to have to leave soon, but first of all, I want to thank you for this interview. This conversation has been great. And I probably have 20 different questions that I just keep thinking of that we're going to have to do another interview to talk about in the future. Because I could tell that you get excited when you start talking about some of these technical details, and which is really awesome. But what is the failure rate? What percentage of peptides do you test that you would not use? That's question number one. Question number two, what is your stack? What do you take? Are you on any peptides?
Well, we have a failure rate of roughly 5%. That means that it's containing considerably different dosage of the peptide, or it's containing a different peptide or no peptide at all.
Yeah.
Then, of course, the separate are the peptides that fail the sterility testing. That's about it. And about what I'm using, I'm not using or doing anything.
Whoa.
Because, well, I feel mostly because it would be a terrible, terrible look for the company if I did anything. We're a research facility. We have the paperwork for scheduled substances. I employ a whole lot of people, and it would be pretty annoying to tell them, okay, so we've got our paperwork taken because
you're using
my hands on
peptides.
something. It most likely wouldn't change anything, but it still helps to keep the relationship with the
authorities.
Supervising authorities. We're supervised by a lot of agencies. We're the biggest importer of scheduled substances like anabolic steroids and peptides, the biggest legal importer in the Schengen area. So we do have a lot of eyes on us. So we try to make everything
above
as
the board.
well as we humanly. Yeah, exactly. Because I love this job. I'm like really enthusiastic about it. I love all the people who work here for me. So I would like this company to keep running for as long as it can. And I absolutely adore when we actually figure out something that we can help people with. Like, it's very fulfilling. It's very when you figure out something, especially if it's some difficult problem, and the people there are super grateful. It's what makes the job nice, when the people are grateful and you actually can feel that you've done a good job yourself.
Okay. Anyway, if you would hold on one second, Peter. Okay, this is Rory at PepTok. This is the end of the interview. I have got to get to work. This has been Peter Magic, doing the magic over there at Janoshik. You guys have a great day.